Hello and welcome to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson and I'm here to bring you the best minds in small business and entrepreneurship. I want to provide you with actionable advice and help you take the next step in your business journey. I'm here to literally help you to be the push you need. Let's get started. All right, so today on the podcast we have Tanya Williams. Tanya, how are you going today?
I'm great, Jack. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all. So Tanya is the Tradigital Strategist and Chief of Everything at Digital Conversations, Chief of Digital Experiences at Sophistica. She writes for smallville.com.au and is an all-round legend. But I quite like, you've got the motto, never let anyone dull your sparkle. Is that correct?
That is my mantra, yes.
Where did that come from?
Look, apart from loving all things sparkly and pink, I think it's really important to be who you are and be authentic, and I'm very outgoing, as you know, and I think it's important to be as who you are, you know, and cool, I think having your own sparkle and being true to that is really important in life. So that's my mantra, is to never let anyone dull your sparkle.
Cool. So is this something you've recently become your mantra, or is this you've always been like this?
It's probably been like this for a few years, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's, as everything, things evolve over time.
Cool.
But I've certainly been using that as my mantra for quite a number of years now.
Awesome. I really like that, actually. Every time I read your bio, it just breaks up the boringness that you sometimes read
exactly
in someone else's bio.
Exactly.
But we have to talk about your business. So you're the chief of everything and a Tradigital strategist. Now, let's talk about what is a Tradigital strategist, Tanya?
So when I talk Tradigital, it's about combining traditional and digital marketing together. So my background started with traditional marketing. So that's where I sort of started my early career. And then through the years, I moved into the digital world, which I know and love a lot. So for me, I think when I started Digital Conversations, I found that there was a bit of a gap in the market where no one was really talking across both. They were either one or the other. And that's, the wrong thing to do. It shouldn't be about, should I be on traditional or digital channels? It's about marketing as a whole, and traditional and digital need to come together. And no one was really having those conversations. So when I launched Digital Conversations, it was literally about how do we pull all this together and get traditional type businesses to understand where digital fits into that mix and how they then integrate that into the mix. So when I talk about Tradigital, it's funny, some people sort of crack up when they hear that term. Oh, what does that mean?
Did you coin the term?
I did. I was like, I'm doing traditional and digital. Oh, hang on, I can just pull those two words together and create this term.
Nice, yeah.
So it is something that a lot of people really don't know how to do well, and a lot of the time it's just them not understanding the basics. And I see a lot with traditional media like print, and they're trying to do things on digital channels and they just really don't know how to bring their two messages together. So when I talk Tradigital, it's about looking at both sides of that equation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you define the difference between traditional and digital?
So traditional is your typical sort of below the line stuff. So it's your newspaper, your radio, your print, your TV, and digital is pretty much classed as anything computer based. So anything from a website, a blog, email, social media, search, content data, that whole sort of piece. So it's about all that traditional stuff, and even like things like going from a traditional billboard to a digital billboard.
Sure.
Two different sides of the equation. So.
Gotcha.
It's your traditional versus the stuff that we've had for many, many years, which was typically very expensive. And I break it down by going traditional is mass market, so it's going to reach a lot of people, and then you can really be quite niche and be quite targeted from a digital point of view, and that's that sort of component of it. So great, let's reach a lot of people, let's drive them to our digital channels, and then we can then filter down and we can measure absolutely everything we do on digital, which is the great thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, I've done a lot of digital marketing. What turns me off a little bit about traditional stuff is the lead times. Yeah. Do you come across that a lot?
I worked in radio for many years. I worked in outdoor, and that's one of the biggest problems. To change a lot of those things from a production point of view is quite costly, and exactly you can't just go bang, hey, let's just switch it immediately, and that's probably one of the biggest downfalls. They certainly have their benefits, and I'm definitely not saying don't do traditional marketing at all, but it's how you can bring digital into part of that, into that mix, and be a bit smarter about how you measuring it, how you delivering it, and the messages that you're putting out there to your audience.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the mistakes people make, you see, when when we come to the Tradigital stuff. Mm-hmm. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about how do you know whether you should be doing digital marketing or traditional, or, as you say, Tradigital, and a mix of both?
Look, it very much depends client to client.
Yep.
So a lot of it comes down to budget.
Yep.
It comes down to where your audience is. So a lot of small business now can't afford to do TV and radio, particularly in a metropolitan market like Brisbane. So it's like you need to look for alternatives and more cost-efficient ways to market your business. And the other component, as I mentioned, was really around where your audience is. So, and I think that's the big step that a lot of businesses forget. They go, well, I'm going to do Facebook because everyone else is on Facebook and that's what I should be doing. It's like, well, hang on, is that where your audience is? Because if your audience isn't there, why invest time and money and resources into it? Yep. So I think that's the first thing, is really identify where your audience and your market is spending their time, and where you should be having those conversations with them. And that will sort of help you identify what one of those channels you really should be on. If you've got a very traditional market, then radio may be a great mix for you, and maybe that should be backed up by some sort of digital component. Again, the conversation is very different depending on the client and their audience. Yeah,
well, I actually find that one thing I've noticed is in very highly built up areas, digital isn't as easy, because you're trying to target an area and there's just heaps of people in that area. And then if you do go offline, I have found some good results from doing that, because you can target, people a lot easier. I know that a lot of us, I mean, me included, kind of think that, let's just do digital because we can target everything, we can measure everything. But there are some instances where it doesn't make sense.
And I totally agree with that. I think with both offline and online, there are pros and cons, and there are ways to be quite niche in both. And I think that's what I like so much about the digital space, is you can be so targeted these days with, I'm going to target women 25 to 30 with dogs that are married with $10,000 in their bank account that like pink shoes. Like you can really target, down really, really quite niche. Whereas traditionally it was hard to reach a very niche market on those traditional channels. So, radio stations were, they were female or male oriented in a certain demographic. So they were 25 to 54 female, or, so it was a lot harder to do that. And I think we're really spoiled for choice. I mean, you even look at TV and digital TV channels and so forth. Now there's so many different options now. You don't just have to choose between 7, 9 and 10. There are goodness, how many TV stations where you can go, well, I'm looking after, I want to reach home renovators. Great, there's stations to reach that. So we're seeing the whole sort of market change, which is a good thing, I think, for business people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I love these conversations. But I mean, there'd be probably a lot of business owners listening now who kind of don't quite know where to go with their marketing. I mean, is marketing that hard?
Oh, look, I think it can get overwhelming if you don't know, if you're not comfortable in that space. Oh, look, I'm the same with accounting. Like, I hate numbers and I hate budgets and I hate all that. And when you start to talk to me about accounting, my eyes just glaze over and I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't want to. So I think it depends on where your comfort zone is. And if you are comfortable sort of in that sort of more creative marketing space, you're probably more likely to understand it, but also want to understand it more. So I think what often happens, particularly with digital, is people get totally overwhelmed by it because there is so much choice. So they look at everything that's out there and available and go, oh my God, where do I start? Like this person's telling me this and this person's telling me that, and I'm being pulled in 10 different directions, and they just go, you know what, it's all too hard, and I'm just going to bury my head in the sand. And that's typically what will happen in general with a lot of marketing, not just digital. And I think it's really up to business owners these days to start to educate themselves a little bit about this stuff. I mean, as I said, as much as I hate accounting, I do have some basic understanding of the principles and what I should do and how I should do it and stuff, because I need to know a certain level as a business owner, even though I will then outsource the majority of it to someone else. I
Yep.
still need to have some sort of an understanding. And it's the same with marketing. You've still got to have some basic concept or understanding of what you should be doing, even if you do then decide to outsource that to
Yeah.
a marketing team or someone within your organisation or whoever that might be. And I think there's a distinction there. And with the information available these days, there's no excuses not to know some of this stuff. There's free courses. There's events like you run with the push. There's like so many things out there where people can go and get access to information really easily. That there really is an excuse anymore. And people always use the time excuse.
Yeah.
Guess what? We're all busy. And if you really want to make the time to do something, you will.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you just stole my next question from me, because I was
sorry.
going to say, yeah, why do people? But is it really time? I mean, that's what people. Yeah.
Look, I think
But
it's
if you
I
don't
think
have
it's
time to have people like spread awareness about your brand. It's pretty important.
it is very important. I
Yeah.
think sometimes people really don't understand the importance of that. And
Yeah.
I have this conversation a lot with clients where they say, oh, we really don't need to do anything at the moment because we're really busy. I'm like, yeah, great. You're busy now. But if you're not continually doing your marketing
Yep.
and having leads being generated and so forth throughout the whole year, when you are quiet, what's going to be there for you to, where are those customers or clients going to be? And I think that is one thing, much as I'm not a great fan of Harvey Norman, they have done that very well over the years, where Jerry Harvey has been a big advocator of, hey, we will advertise, and they actually do a lot more advertising in those bad times because they know that, hey, we're going to come through, we're going to do this and come through the end of it because we're consistently getting these messages out to our audience. And I think that's a big thing, is consistency.
Yep.
What often happens with small businesses, they go, we're going to do some marketing campaign, and they'll do this little blip for a month, and they'll go, we'll do some letterbox drops, or we'll do some Facebook ads, or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And then they don't do anything else.
Yeah.
There's no consistency with their branding and their messages, and that's really where there needs to be some consistency. So it's like, let's look at what budgets we have, and it's not about having huge budgets, but if we've got a tiny budget, let's look at how we allocate that over the year and start to do it a bit more smarter than trying to throw everything into a month or 2 months over the year. I mean, it's just never going to work.
I love this topic because I hear this a lot too, is that you I won't need marketing at X point. And call me biased.
You always need marketing.
You always need marketing. I would like to drill into that a bit because it's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to really explain why it is imperative, even when the times are good, to still keep that presence. Because mentally, you think a business owner, you're thinking, oh wow, I'm doing fine. I'm doing just fine. I don't need more customers. And there might be a tiny percentage that can get away with something like that, perhaps. But let's talk about why you can't drop the ball, why you can't rest on your laurels when it comes to your marketing.
I think, as I said, it's really having a consistent brand presence. I mean, you look at everything that a lot of the big guys are doing as well, and they are consistent in their messaging out to their audience. There's a lot of competition out there now. And if you're not consistently in front of them and saying, hey, remember me, and I'm doing this, and come and talk to me, and all that sort of stuff, then they're very quickly going to forget you. So you might be going, this is great, we've got all the clients that we need at the moment. And then in 3 months' time or a month's time or whatever that might be, where you're going, oh, geez, we're a little bit quiet at the moment. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I bought something from you a while ago. Yeah, so I can't remember. So I think the biggest thing that I see with so many businesses is they're not utilising their existing customers in their database as well. So they're going, great. I had a conversation with a client last year, and they had 60,000 people on their database. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Email database, was it? Oh, wow.
What are you guys doing with that? And they went, nothing. And I'm like, are you serious? Like,
wow.
How have you got a database of 60,000 customers and you are not doing anything with it? It wasn't segmented, though. It was literally just sitting on a computer somewhere. And I just went, that is such a missed opportunity, guys. And why are you going to go and spend all this money on creating all these new customers when you've got an existing database there that you should be marketing to ongoing? Wow. And I think that's the thing. People just focus always on new customers. But what about your existing customers? And how can I reach out to them, add value to them so they want to do more business with me? Rather than going and spending, I mean, we all know that it costs more to get a new customer than what it does to look after an existing customer. Yeah. And as a consumer, I see that so often where I'll experience that and I go, man, that's such a lost opportunity. I was only whining to my husband about it on the weekend. I was like, man, why didn't they do that? Like, that's such a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, why are they? And to me, it's so obvious as a consumer, but I think a lot of the time businesses really miss the basic stuff. They're so busy focusing on the high and the fancy stuff that they miss the basics. Yeah.
That's so interesting because I think that, there is that overwhelm that we were talking about before, but you're saying that, you run into a lot of people that if they just, let's stop for a second and just look at what we've got, just start utilizing that just for the moment.
Yep.
Pretty accurate, yeah.
Very accurate.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I do a lot of my clients is do a digital audit.
Yeah.
And I say, before we go and spend money and look at strategies and all that sort of stuff, let's look at what we've currently got. What are our assets? What are we using well? What are we not using well? Where are we missing opportunities? And 9 times out of 10, we find really simple things that they can put in place where they're just not doing. And you go, why aren't you guys doing this? Oh, we didn't know how to. It was too hard. Or we didn't know where to start. And you go, that's something you can literally do for free.
Yeah.
So why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
So I think when it's like anything, when you're too close, when you're running your own business, you're so close to it, sometimes you can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with, and it doesn't matter what industry they're in. A lot of the times they're so close to it that they literally cannot see the opportunities right in front of them. And that's always a really good place to start, is to do some sort of an audit, to look at everything that you're doing and then go, where is my audience? What are the competitors doing? Let's look at everything and then go, hang on, there's a massive gap here.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be, and why aren't we doing something about it?
Yeah. Wow. I love it. Because it is the next step in anything always needs to be simple, right? It's so easy to
keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Everyone overcomplicates it.
Yeah.
Don't make it so hard.
Yeah.
Let's just keep this down. And I said, start with the basics and the foundations, because I guarantee most businesses don't. They want to fly, and you go, let's walk before we can fly, okay? Let's get the foundational stuff happening, and then let's slowly start to build on that, because that adds to the overwhelm as well. When they go, oh my God, I just don't know where to start. Well, let's start with the basics. And let's do that. And then it's the same with social media, where I see so many businesses on 5 or 6 social media channels, small businesses, and you go, how are you guys managing that? Oh, hang on, you're not, because you're not doing any of them well, because you're trying to spread yourself too thin. You don't know what you should be putting. You're putting the same content across every single channel, which is the wrong thing to do. And they think that they have to be on all those channels because all of their competitors are. And again, it's like, well, hang on, where is your audience? And let's start with the 1 or 2 channels that you think are going to be the best fit for you. And then build from there. I think everyone wants to be. We want it now as society. We want everything now.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
But it's like, you've got to walk before you can run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be. Hopefully, it's heartening for the listeners to hear that 9 out of 10 people
guaranteed.
that you talk to are not utilizing what they have.
And it's not just small business. It's big guys. I can't even tell you the amount of times I see things like Telstra and McDonald's and big companies that should, Australia Post, Qantas, that should get this stuff right?
Yeah.
You would think that they have these resources and all these years in experience and stuff, that shouldn't they get this stuff right? And so often they don't. It's as simple as monitoring a social media channel. I won't even mention any names, Jack, because I could upset a few people. But some big companies that really have no idea. And you go, why are you guys even on Twitter if you're not going to utilize your channels or listen to what your audience is saying? Simple things like that. And these guys have got billions of dollars of resources at their fingertips, and they're not doing it properly.
As a general rule, would it be fair to say that you'd suggest doing 3 channels well rather than doing 6?
Yes.
Like a mediocre job.
Less
of 6?
is more. Less is definitely more when it comes to social media, especially if you're a small business and you've only got, you don't have someone dedicated full time to doing it, which most small business people don't. If you've got a small team or you're outsourcing or whatever it might be, still just start small, exactly. Do 2 or 3 rather than doing 6 or 7. It's just ridiculous. You're never going to do them well, particularly if you're not doing, your content plans and you're not doing a lot of that sort of planning and strategy work. It's just like, hey, let's just throw stuff on there. It's the wrong way to approach it. And it's never going to work, because the social media world changes so quickly.
Yeah, yep.
Facebook make changes every day, every week. Like it's just absolutely crazy the amount of changes that they make.
Yep.
It's hard for me as a digital professional to keep up with that.
Yeah.
So how does
Yep.
a small business owner that's
Yep.
that's wearing 20 hats do that? It's near impossible, so.
Yep. Do we overestimate the competition too much, Tanya?
In terms of...
Well, I just think it's interesting that you were saying before that 9 out of 10 people you approach are not doing this, and
Yep.
but are we thinking that everyone else is doing such a good job of everything?
Look, I think so. I think everyone's really focused on what everyone else is doing, and you have to be aware of it, of course. I mean, you have to be aware of what your competition is doing. That it's important, but you shouldn't be focused totally on what they're doing. And I think that's a big mistake that people go, well, they're doing this and they're doing that, so we should do that. And it's just like, well, hang on, no. Like, make your own path, and I'm a big believer in make your own rules, and don't be afraid to stand out from your industry. I did a video blog recently around how to find new ideas by looking outside your industry. Like, don't just look at what everyone else is doing. Go and look at something that's totally unrelated to what you do and see what they're doing and go, hey, well, maybe we can adopt that for what we do here.
Yep.
So it's about thinking a bit outside the square, and I think a lot of businesses find that hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose this segues perfectly onto another topic about where you've written a book recently with contributors such as Philip DeBella, Janine Ellis. What are their tricks, Tanya?
Look, I think most people often do, they didn't sort of overcomplicate everything. So when they were starting out, so Janine was really interesting to talk to. I mean, Boost Juice, if anyone's read any of Janine's book, she has a really interesting story and is very transparent in her journey and in business and everything that she's done. And none of them professed to know everything. And that was really interesting, where no one was like, oh, we do it fabulously and we're perfect. And no one that I spoke to, I spoke to Chris from Vita Group. I mean, they've got how many? I can't remember how many hundreds of stores across Australia. Steve Baxter, people who are in technology who understand this space, but no one was like, yep, look, we know it all. Yeah. And I think that's really important to recognise, to say that these guys started off small. They started off with a lot of trial and error. So everyone that I spoke to was like, yep, we tried this, that didn't work, we tweaked it, we changed it, we adjusted the formula until we got to a point where we got it right. Kelly from Edible Blooms spoke about, they were one of the first e-commerce stores and they were one that were very successful. And she said, we didn't really know anything about email marketing, and Google Analytics was new, and like we would look at our data and be like, oh my God, look at this, and be like freaking out about the numbers and all that sort of stuff, going, this is amazing, look, we can see all this real-time data. And they were real pioneers for a lot of this stuff, but it was just trial and error.
Yeah.
And I think in the world that we live in now, even though we do know so much more, not enough people look at that as well and go, well, let's just start.
Yeah.
Let's just start somewhere. Let's just jump in, have a go. And I think that's the great thing with digital, is you don't need to spend ridiculous amounts of money on it. You can go and you can throw a couple of Facebook ads on and do some testing and stuff, and it might cost you $20. And, then you can do some more and you can trial that and change that. And I think it's so inexpensive to do these days. The quickest way is just to get on and just do it and learn from it. And that's what these guys, the big guys have done. They've gone, well, let's just have a go and see what happens and see where it takes us. And, they've done that really well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you talk about data, because also, I suppose, the challenge with data is knowing how to interpret it, though, right? Yeah. I mean...
But again, don't overcomplicate it. Yeah. So it's one of the things that it always intrigues me. And look, I know data's not fun. It's, no one wants to have a look at numbers and data and so forth. I don't want to do that either. Yeah. But it's really important to really identify and understand who your audience is. So where are they? What channels are they on? Just by looking at simple things like your Google Analytics data, which every website should have. And if you don't have a Google Analytics account, it's free and you should have one. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Yep. But how do you understand the history of your audience? One of my clients that I'm working with currently, they didn't know when I asked them if they had a Google Analytics account. Right. And I was like, okay, so then we discovered, yes, they did. And we looked at the data, and what I found from that review was quite different to what they thought. And we were like, we thought our audience was this, and it's actually these are the people that are coming to our website. So unless you look at those numbers, you don't know. So that's always a starting point to say, well, let's look, see what devices they're on. Let's see, are they male, are they female? Where are they located? What pages are they looking at? Are they bouncing straight off my homepage? Because if they are, then obviously there's an issue with my homepage, and I need to look at that as a starting point. Like those simple things.
Yep.
And then from there, once you know what that customer looks like, only then can you create content for them. And I think everyone gets it back the front where they go, hey, let's put this pretty content out there, and here's a pretty picture with some writing over it. And they're really hoping that it reaches the right audience, where they've a lot of the time done no research to say, well, that is going to resonate with the audience that I'm trying to talk to. Because they're trying to be everything to everyone all the time as well, rather than be niche, which is where people should be doing.
You know, I think it's also challenging because it's tough to have that high level discussion and thought, you know, what are we, who are we targeting, you know, and then you really have to think, you know, like you have to spend a bit of time actually thinking.
I mean, it's about having a strategy, right?
Yeah. But, you know, I've run into a lot of people too that they want to talk about the ins and outs of what they're doing, and, you know, the day-to-day and the which is important to an extent. But if we don't start with what are we trying to do, the rest is sort of, how do I put it? It's almost irrelevant, or it's just sort of shooting through the fog with you and just hoping you hit a target.
It's like shooting bullets and hoping they hit something. Exactly right. And I mean, I use the social media example often for this, because people, you know, you talk to people and say, well, you know, why are you using social media? Well, I don't know, because my competitors are, because someone told me I had to. And it's just like, that's crazy. So what are your goals? I don't know, maybe to get some more followers. Like, they have absolutely no idea why they're on there, or have no set goals or KPIs or anything around, you know, what they're doing with their social channels. And as I said, it comes back down. It's the basics. You know, it's the same as having, you know, a strategy around all this stuff. Like, just so many people I speak to, and they say, oh, you've got a digital strategy? Oh, yeah, it's all up here in my head. Awesome. So how do you share that with your team? How do you, like, where is that written down so your team know what the tactics and so forth are that you need to be putting in place? And all the strategy is that roadmap of how to get from A to B. So this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and the strategy component is how we're going to get there, you know, and these are all the tactics we're going to put in place to make it happen. And again, that gets overcomplicated every single time. And it's just guys, it doesn't need to be a 500-page document. Like, it just needs to be simple, but have a plan in place. Start with that, so you've got a clear direction. Otherwise, it's like running around in the dark. Oh, hang on, I ran into the wall. I'm going to go over this. Oh, hang on, how do I get out? And they just run around in circles. They don't know what's working in terms of marketing. They don't know where their dollars, like where their marketing dollars are working, because they're throwing stuff at all sorts of things and hoping that something sticks. And that's a good way to spend a lot of money and waste a lot of money, rather than having a clear plan and going, this is our audience. And you don't have to have one audience. I mean, you might have multiple audiences. You might say, well, we talk to, you know, 5 different audience groups, and that's fine, but you have different conversations with each one.
Of course,
And that's the thing. They just want to spout the same conversation out to everyone and think that, you know, the 55-year-old grandfather is going to pick up and resonate with the same content that the 18-year-old girl is. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right?
I think that's a fair point.
It happens all the time.
So this brings me to a next point. Like, one of the good ways I've heard this point, one of the best ways I've heard this put is, someone said, if your Facebook page was an employee, what would its role be? I really like that, because it just means that all the pieces to the puzzle should have a purpose. They should fit together. But just for some more specifics, like, what are, like, maybe 3 or 4 things we could look at in our Google Analytics, you know, high-end stuff that would give us a snapshot. Without worrying, because Google Analytics, you can drill down. That can be confusing as well. I mean, could be someone's full-time job for a lot of businesses. It's just analysing what Google Analytics is telling you. So what are some of those high-end metrics we could possibly look at that
I think it's, as I said, it's really identifying who your audience is and who your customer is. So the simple things like, are they male or female? And you can see, the demographics of that by looking at your analytics of as who's coming from where. Location is obviously really important, and particularly if you have interstate offices. So if you are a business that has offices Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, you can really sort of drill down and say, well, this is where most of our traffic's coming from. And then you can match that with your things like your social media or any advertising and so forth that you're doing in different markets, to say, well, that makes sense because we're, doing most of our advertising in Sydney, therefore most of our traffic's coming from Sydney. So you can start to look at those types of things.
And I suppose you might come across a sort of a golden nugget of you're not doing anything in a certain area and like, whoa, this is going through the roof. We should follow that rabbit warren a bit more.
Exactly. Yeah. Why are we getting all these customers from, the back of Burke? And something's obviously happened. Maybe there was some media that went out there. And that's about, making sure that there's a connection between what's happening from a marketing point of view as well and what's happening for your sales team. And I think often the two don't really speak to one another, because if I'll share an example if that's okay.
Awesome. Yep.
Of a magazine in Brisbane. This is going back a couple of years ago, who had an ad for this lovely dress that I love that. That would be perfect for Melbourne Cup Day, and it was a Melbourne Cup feature. And I went, awesome, I want it. They were sending people to their website. I went to their website, could not find the dress, could not find any mention of the sale, could not find anything at all to do with the ad. Wow. And I was like, hang on a minute, you're telling me to go to your website. I'm going to your website. I can't find the item that you're promoting. Now, normally I would just go, okay, next. I'm not like, if you can't make it easy for me, I'm just going to go and buy it from somewhere else. But I did really like this dress. So I actually went to the effort of ringing the store. Yep. The store didn't even know about it. Whoa, they were like, oh, have we got an ad in this magazine? I'm like, are you serious? And they're like, oh, we didn't even know there was an ad running. Oh, that dress sold out like, a month ago. And I'm like, what? Wow. So it's just highlighting the disconnect between departments and how that sort of happens to say, well, you're spending how many thousands of dollars on this ad? Yeah. How many other people have the same experience of me? And then they'll say, oh, the ad didn't work. Well, actually, the ad did work, but there was a disconnect between, that and the store and the communication internally and so forth. So, again, simple stuff that gets missed.
I think being thorough can just be boring sometimes, Tanya.
It's true. Yeah, why do we need to tell our staff what's happening when we're selling stuff? I mean, that's not important, right?
Having a supply chain,
yeah, who needs that?
Yeah. It's all the stuff no one wants to do.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about your business journey. When did you start out in business?
I've been in business in different forms, I suppose, for a lot of years. So I've had my first business when I think I was about 21, 22, which was a little sort of marketing promotions business when I was living in New South Wales. Yep. And then went back into full-time work and didn't do that. And then I sort of dabbled again. When did I start? I had an online shoe store. Oh, really? So that was, and cool. I had no experience with e-commerce. I had absolutely no idea. I had conversations with the web dev and would just look at him blankly going, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So it was a very steep learning curve, having to deal with shopping carts and building this website and fulfill orders and that sort of thing. But I mean, when you're selling shoes, I mean, it's lots of fun. Yeah. So I had Princess Chic for 6 or 7 years, I think. Right. And it was we specialised in custom made shoes, and then I just got totally burnt out because e-commerce is a very hard game, particularly when you're up against big competitors who have big budgets and lots of people working for them, and you go, how do I compete with that? Yep. And when you're one person trying to do everything, very hard. Yep. And I was, this is all too hard. So I went back to full-time work and then started Digital Conversations 2 years ago when, something happened in a job that I was at where unfortunately I was made redundant and I went, oh, what am I going to do? And I really don't want to go back to doing the same thing again and went, there's a gap in the market for this Tradigital specialty and went, let's give it a go. And it's been a really exciting 2 years and like anyone in business knows, it's a roller coaster and some days you go, why am I doing this? And other days you go, oh my God, I love what I do. Yeah. But I'm really fortunate to get to have great conversations with people like yourself and people who are in business and just really help them navigate this digital path and help them to understand how they can make it a bit easier.
Yeah.
Which, as I said, can be really overwhelming for some people.
Yeah. What about sort of your relationship with self-doubt? I mean, I'm going to talk about that type of thing a lot on the podcast because it's, I hear it so much. I really do. Is that, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I mean, we're going back to basics again, like, just the simple stuff that, but I would be interested if you're willing to share, like how you look at that type of thing.
Look, you have good days and you have bad days.
Yeah.
I'm a very positive, optimistic person, so that helps me. But I've had days where I get in a funk and, I sit there and I beat myself up and think, what the hell do you know? And who would listen to you? And, you have, all these ridiculous thoughts that come into your head because of something that's happened that's outside your control or whatever it might be. But I think every single person in business has that. And you'll go to a networking function, everything's fabulous, blah, blah, and you be like that. And I think it's really important to have people around you. So whether it's, your partner, whether it's friends, whether it's, a business network of some sort where you can go and go, you know what, I've had a really crap day today. This happened and I didn't know how to navigate it, or I didn't know how to deal with this situation, or, it's been really stressful, and just be able to vent. Wine helps, I find, as well, when you've had one of those days. And I'm the sort of person that finds it very hard to be vulnerable.
Yep.
And
amen to that.
Yeah, like we all just want to pretend that everything's fabulous and rosy all the time, and the reality is that it isn't. And I think when you are starting a business, it's important to identify and to recognise that and listen to other people in business. I remember having a conversation. I've got a couple of friends who are in business and have been in business like 8 or 9 years. And one of my friends I was sort of chatting to one day briefly, I ran into her and I said, I'm just waiting for everything just to be really stable. And, and she just looked at me and went, Tanya, that will never happen. And I'm like, what? You just totally burst my bubble. Here I am thinking. And she said, no, she said, I've been in business for 8 years. Yeah. And she has a very successful business, but she said, it's up and down and it's managing cash flow and it's managing staff and it's managing all these things. Yeah. And I think there's a perception from, and I hear this from people in business all the time, that people think, oh, you're in business, you must be loaded. Yeah. You must be doing really well. It's like, hang on a minute. Like in actual fact, often it's probably the opposite, because we really put a lot on the line to be able to do what we do. I went from earning, a really good wage, and sometimes you just go, why am I doing this? But you like to think that at the end of the day, there's a lot of benefits, there's a lot of flexibility, there's lots of great things that happen, and you're really forging your own path. And it's not all, sparkles and champagne and bubbly yachts. And yachts and hey, it's lunchtime and I'm just not going back to work today. In actual fact, it's more like, I had 4 hours sleep last night because my head was just so full of things that I have to do this and I've got to get that done and I need to go hear this, like it was just these lists that I was creating in my head. And it is sometimes hard to balance everything. But, like anything, there's good and bad for working for someone else, and there's good and bad for working for yourself as well. And I think understanding that before you go in, or being okay with that and going, you know what, it's okay. I'm having a bad day. I'm okay to it's fine to have a bad day every now and then. Yep. And just own it and accept it, and then go, yep, okay, I'll just start again tomorrow. And just try and remain optimistic, and I read a lot of books as well. So I read a lot of business books, but like really sort of things like Remarkability and what was the other one I read recently that I loved? Oversubscribed, and like stuff that's not too heavy to read, but I just get a lot out of it, and I get inspired by what the other businesses do. Like I love Janine's books, Janine Ellis. Like she's, written some great books, and just reading what those guys have done. Philip DeBella, another good book. And just being inspired by their journeys. And I think that's good to remind yourself, hang on, these guys didn't have it easy. Yeah, I mean, Philip sold the company for $93 million, a couple of years ago. But I mean, look at what he had to do to get to that point. People don't see the heartache and the ups and the downs and the stress and all that. They only see the fact that he sold the company for this amount of money.
They see the result. Yeah,
exactly. They see the result. And I think that's pretty general in business. Yeah. They don't see all the hard work and the blood, sweat and the tears. They only just see the outcome at the end of it.
What do you think would happen if we were more vulnerable to the people around us? Because I think the perception is with that, it's certainly something I've had, is that when things are bad, you can't lead on because then who's going to want to work with you, right? Like, so it's a hard it feels like a double-edged sword a bit. But in saying that, there's someone I really respected that I saw speak recently. I hold what are called foul ups and failures events every sort of 6 months, and people can come and talk about what went wrong. There's no happy endings, no good stories here. This is just about all the shit they had to go through, basically. And someone I really respected talked about just things that I just had no idea were going on behind the scenes. But I came out of that respecting them more. Yeah. So from that experience, I'm like, are we just fearing an openness at times that it is actually going to help us, in business?
Think fear is such a big part of it. Yeah. As I said, I have trouble being vulnerable. Yep. So for me, I find it very hard to, unless it's with close friends who I can have those conversations with and say, oh my God, like I've had a really bad week, or, I don't know what direction to go here, and I don't know what to do, or, I wouldn't normally have those conversations with someone unless they were a really close friend because of that, because it is that fear of going, well, what are they going to think of me? I'm supposed to be an expert about all this stuff, and, and it doesn't matter, who you are. I mean, Philip DeBella, Steve Baxter, all those guys, they would all have days of self-doubt and what the hell would I know? And, and I think that's the thing, what we think that Richard Branson would be the same. I'm sure he has days where he just goes, oh my God, why don't I just give it all up now? Yeah. But I think that's just the nature of it. And I think it probably would be helpful if we were probably all more forthcoming and about that and had more of those conversations. But it's not the sort of thing you want to go to an event and be like, hey, how are you? Oh, shit, actually, I've just had the worst day and this happened. You don't want to hear that because it brings you down. You just want to be surrounded by, positive people and optimism. So I suppose it's really knowing where that opportunity is to have those sorts of conversations as well. Like, what's the right forum for that? I mean, my husband hears it all the time, so he's like, I hear it constantly. But and I'm sure he's totally sick of hearing it. But I don't know. I don't know that there's an easy answer to that. But I agree that if we all went, you know what? Yeah, it's not all sunshine and roses, and we were a bit more vulnerable, and we could have more of those conversations, and there were forums to have those conversations, I think that would be a lot more in line. Because I'm the same. I love to hear other people's stories. I love hearing people's stories. And if I hear like someone who's been really successful, or even if they're not, just a story that they've gone through, and I just go, you know what, good on you. You've been through this horrible event, or something really bad has happened to you, and here you are, you've got this vision for your business, and even though you're not successful yet, you're giving it a go. And I'm the same. I have a lot of admiration for those sorts of people, and say, good on you. I think that takes a lot of guts, and that's really hard to do. Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just about that. I just find that perception of people in business fascinating, and we can talk to it. The listeners of this can probably talk to it too. Yeah. If they are in business yet, if not, this is sort of just what it could be like at times. But also you say about the loaded point, I found interesting, because you got to think about money completely differently when you run a business. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm going to get paid the same next week necessarily, and I can just blow it really if I want to. It's got to be like, you've got to have sort of risk management strategies in place. It's not just it's a very different, I find anyway, a very different way of actually looking at money.
Oh, totally. Look, this was a total eye-opener for me, to be, when you go from a really good salary to starting your own business, going, hang on, I'm starting from zero here, to understanding how to manage money, and even I'm getting better at it. But it wasn't even until recently where I went, I need to start to take some control of this myself, because again, I hate accounts and all that sort of stuff. I would enter all the stuff. The bookkeeper would, do the BAS, or hubby would do the BAS, or someone. I'd be like, oh yeah, I've got to pay this much, or whatever it might be. But it's only recently that I've started to take some accountability on that and go, you know what? I know I don't like this stuff, but I need to understand and take some ownership of the money side of it, and not rely on everyone else. And when I did that, I started to see opportunities where I went, I could be saving money there. I shouldn't be paying, like all this money on all these insurances. If I can combine that, that's going to save me $2,000 a year. Or, geez, if I do this, I mean, I cut my phone bill in half by having a conversation. I mean, it's how hard it is to actually get someone from Australia on the phone in Telstra is just about near impossible. I won't even share some of the words that were spoken to get to that point. But I eventually got someone, and by doing that, I slashed my phone bill in half. So I think by taking some ownership and going, you know what, I need to look at this money stuff myself rather than just relying on everyone else, it really opened up. I was like, I didn't realize I was spending that much money on that, or, it's just, taking that ownership. But I think about money very differently, whereas it's just coming in every week and it's going into your bank account and, bills getting paid. You're just like, well, it is very different, because even when you're going, oh, this is great, it's been a great month, I can't just go and blow all that money, because I need to allow for, I don't know what's going to happen what's going to be, what it's going to be like in 6 months' time. So I need to have that buffer there. So it is a very different way of thinking about money. And I think that can be a really hard adjustment. If you've come from the corporate world and you're used to this money going into your bank account every week, every month or whatever, and going, oh, hang on a minute, I can't just go and, go on a holiday and spend that amount of money and spend, this much money on, $5,000 on a pair of shoes or whatever.
Exactly.
It's a very different, You're always weighing things up going, well, hang on, I can spend $100 on that, or I can put it towards, this networking event or this thing, or learning this, or towards the business. So I've found that the way I spend my money is very different. So, unfortunately for my wardrobe, I've had to cut back on the shopping.
Oh, no.
Big time.
Yeah. Sorry, listeners. I didn't know this was going to be such a sad podcast.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? But, I've had to make those sacrifices. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to look at my wardrobe. My mum got a pretty good wardrobe. So I don't need to go and spend money on some of this stuff. Where I've gone, well, that money's better spent on, on building the business and reinvesting that back into, other areas that are going to make the business grow and be more profitable. So I think that's where that money... The money thoughts are very different as to I go and blow it on a $500 pair of Jimmy Choos, or I can put that towards a course that I can learn, or that can go towards building a landing page, or whatever it might be. It's a very different conversation. Yeah,
I almost feel there is I'm a little bit obsessed with personal finance lately, and I almost feel like if someone is about to get into business, there is an opportunity to really nail your personal finance, and you'll learn some good skills from that, I believe, because being in business, that's the part I think I am strong with. I am strong with the managing the money side of it.
Manage my money then.
This isn't the sales pitch. So when I talk to people who are struggling personally in their own life with money, I sort of got into that for a while and was like helping people, and I found it was really interesting actually to go down that path and just, I do feel that if you can start with just nailing your personal finance, some of that will translate over into to business. Because I use a lot of the same thoughts and the same strategies now with my personal finance that I do with my business. Is you should have a buffer, as you said. You should. X amount a week needs to be going to this. X amount needs to be going to this. It's similar. One of the differences, I suppose, is I'm prepared to spend money from my business if I can see a return, where a lot of things in your personal life, there's no real tangible return.
Going out to a nice dinner, it's like it's just a nice thing to do. You're not going to get a return on investment.
But I honestly find there is and that's something that's not really talked about that much either, is your personal finance.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And I think that was something that I was never good at, because, the money would go into my bank account each week, and the mortgage would come out and stuff would come out, and hubby would pay the bills and, all that sort of stuff. And I really didn't take too much notice of, I had my own, go and get cash out, and, I had my own money, but I really didn't take too much notice of that. And when you go into business, you have to start to take notice of that. And I think that was probably definitely something that I could have done better and taken more awareness and more control over my own personal finances. And I think that would have put me in a much better position and being able to navigate this whole, accounting stuff from a business point of view much better if I had have been able to. I think that's a great point. I think if you are looking at going into business, getting control of that before you do that is a great tip, Jack.
Yeah. Well, I've just found a lot of the people I worked with, they didn't want to spend the 15 minutes a week. That's just for the awareness, just to see where it's all going. And a lot of people would plan, I found, but no one would reflect. And reflection's what happened, and planning's what you hope will happen.
Yeah.
So that was all really fascinating to me. But our personal lives are, they matter now, right? So we have, if we have a Facebook page and our, a potential employer has a look at it, things can go wrong, can't they?
And I see this often where I only had a client I was talking to recently who had a candidate. They were looking to bring on someone in a new role, and they were really keen on this girl. And she said to me, "Yeah, we looked at a Facebook page and just went no." Wow. So she didn't even make the interview, just based on what they saw and the perception of what was on her Facebook page. They were just like, hang on a minute, like this girl's going to be representing our company.
Yep.
How she's perceived is obviously really important. And it's one of those things that a lot of people, when they're looking for jobs, really don't understand the impact that it has, the importance of it. And these days I work with a lot of recruiters and in the recruitment space. And they are looking at all of these channels now. Yep. So gone are the days where you just, you had your paper resume. It's all about looking at your digital footprint and, what are you doing on LinkedIn, and are you writing articles, and, what's on your Facebook page? Is it drunken photos of you on the weekend, or is it, stuff it's employer friendly and so forth? And it really is being aware. I mean, as a business owner, you'd be the same. I think twice about what I would put up on my own personal Facebook page.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I have friends on there who are clients, but I'm like, that reflects on me and my business as well. So it's really important to be putting things up there that are business friendly, and I think that's something that a lot of people forget. They go, but it's my personal page. And it's like, yeah, it might be your personal page, but it still reflects on your business and your own personal brand.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't think twice.
I think I was like that for a while. I was like, nah, I'll do what I want on my Facebook page.
Thank
you very much. And reality says, well, someone might look at it and might not like what you're posting, and that might have a real world consequence.
Well, that could be a potential client. That could be a supplier or a partner that you're going to work with. It could be a new boss. It could be anyone. You don't know who is looking from anywhere in the world. I mean, we get opportunities from outside of our own backyard as well, and that all forms part of your digital footprint.
Yeah.
And if anyone's Googled themselves, you'll see what comes up. I mean, I know when I Googled myself there a while ago, I mean, there was stuff that came up from like 9 years ago, old blogs and stuff that I'd written. That stuff is always there. So it's really important to make sure you're making a good impression, because, word of click is the closest thing to word of mouth these days.
Yeah. So this is an interesting point, because I want to, I understand you're making online courses for recruiters now, and you're also helping candidates with this type of thing. How often do you see a candidate have you sort of drunken photos on Facebook, and does this happen a lot, or is this?
It's pretty common
really?
To have.
Okay.
It's the the overuse of selfies and the bikini shots and the and the drunken photos and the stuff where you look at it and you go, really, what were you doing there? And it's the questionable stuff that as a potential employer, I might look at that and go, I'm not quite sure that I want someone that's doing that on the weekend working for my company. So again, yes, it is your personal page, but again, it's thinking, this stuff stays there forever. Do you really want some of this stuff to be on your Facebook page or on your Twitter page or on your Instagram or whatever it might be? And it's getting them to think about creating digital footprints. So one of the, as you mentioned, two of the courses I'm doing, one is for candidates, and that is to really help candidates of any age, of any background, develop a digital footprint and refine what they've already got. So it's amazing. So many people say, oh, I've got a LinkedIn profile and it's fine. You look at it and you go, oh my God, really? No. 9 out of 10 people, their profile photos are bad. Their LinkedIn profiles are not good, even though they'll say that they're great. Oh, hang on a minute. No, this is all about you, not about outcomes. And that's a whole other podcast.
Yep.
And they don't understand the impact that stuff has. So the courses are the candidate courses is a short course designed to look at what you're doing currently with your digital channels, and then if you do want to look for a new role, how you can share your expertise on some of the existing channels and some of the new channels, and how you can be more creative, and some of the digital tools that are out there that you probably never heard of that you can actually use to be smarter in how you're applying for jobs and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff out there that people wouldn't even realise now, because especially if they're used to just filling out a typical, I'll fill out my CV and send that off to someone. We live in a very different world now in a different job market. And then the recruitment course is for recruiters.
Yep.
So recruitment is marketing these days, and you have to be digitally savvy, and you need to understand how digital fits into what you do as a recruiter. And the course is around that. So it's a 12-week course where you get on there and you learn some of this stuff, and you actually do exercises and implement and make a difference to how you work. So at the end of the day, you earn more money and your boss earns money and more money, and everyone's happy.
But it's one of those areas, recruiting, that I looked at it from the outside myself. I was like, that seems easy. Like with most things, I suppose. And then you get involved. You're like, I've tried to, recruit a lot of people. Yeah. It's hard. There's a lot to it. And it's not just putting it out on Seek anymore, is it?
No, not at all. It's candidates are really driving this whole sort of digital transformation in that space, I suppose, where they're going, we make it easy for us. I mean, if you've applied for a job in the last couple of years, you would go probably, if you're applying for a job on Seek, and then you'll get to their website and they want you to fill another form which puts all the same information in again, so you're filling it all out again, and the whole sort of process is takes ages. It's double handling. It's, from a candidate point of view, oh my God, look, it's just also hard. Is it worth it, all this time and effort to go through this process? Whereas these days we're going, we don't have to do this. Candidates are lucky now that they're getting sought out. So they're going, well, if you want me, you make it easy for me to apply for your job. Or come and work for you, and a lot of that comes back down to that employer branding piece as well. Whereas I talk to a lot of clients around creating employer brand ambassadors. You've got staff with profiles. How do you utilize those profiles and capture them as a brand to leverage that out and amplify that out to a much bigger market? No one's doing it. No, right. No one's thinking about it. No one's understanding how to do it, and you can do it so cheaply. But again, it's the sort of stuff that they're just not thinking of and looking at from a digital point of view.
It's fascinating you say that, because you hear so much negativity in the media around there's no jobs out there and stuff. But you're actually, if you've got chops, obviously you're still in a position of power in the digital age.
And I'm a big believer in you can sort of make opportunities happen as well. I mean, we all know it's usually who you know. I think 70% of jobs don't get advertised or something, because, I mean, I know how many people will ask me, I'm after someone that can do this. Do you know someone? Actually, I might be able to put you in touch with someone. So a lot of the job market is very much like that, or a big part of it is. And then the rest of it is that, recruitment space and, finding job seekers through, your job boards and all that sort of stuff. But you've just got to look at what's happening in the overseas markets, and that all filters down to here, and that's starting to happen now. Yeah. This whole social recruiting world and this, this world of recruitment is changing. And, all those old style recruiters are going to need to change their game. Otherwise, they just won't be around.
I suppose you can get a really good feel for someone, though, just by following them on social media, and they don't even
just
know.
Just by looking at their website, like it astounds me sometimes. I've looked at some websites and went, "How old is your website?" Oh, yeah, we got that done, 5 years ago, 6 years, sent in. You go, yeah, I think it might be time for a bit of a revamp. It looks like it's about 20 years old. So again, just some of the basic stuff. Your website probably needs to be done every 2 or 3 years. It's you got to keep up with the time. That's your digital shop front. If you've got a retail store, you shop windows, you shop front. If you're a professional services business or recruitment business or whoever, your website is your shop front. And that's your first impression. And if you're not making a great first impression, the first thing I think of if someone's got a really old or outdated website is, oh my God, like if this is what your website looks like, what's it going to be like doing business with you? Is it really going to be old school and hard and and all that sort of stuff? So it does form an opinion offline of what you've got on your online channels.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say that we can't do what we want with our own social media sites anymore? I mean, like even with Facebook, for example, an argument to that might be, oh no, well I'll just put it on private. Is that good enough?
Look, I just think you just need to be smart about it. I mean, you can change all the settings that you want, but at the end of the day, just be smart about it and think, if before you post something, think, would my mum approve of this, or would my boss approve of this, or if I had a child, would they approve of that? Like, just be sensible with the sorts of things that you're putting out there. It's even some people that know better that are of the older generation. Sometimes some of the stuff you just go, really too much information, and that's really probably not something that I want to know about. So again, think 2 or 3 times before you post stuff on anything. Whether it's a blog post that you put up, or whether it's something that goes on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. It's have a look at it and go, yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah. That's professional. It's you're allowed to have an opinion. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion or having a say. It's not about conforming or anything, but it's about, is this really appropriate?
Yeah, it's almost interesting. Always interesting. Sorry, should I say? To me, sometimes you see that difference between the offline person, then you hear what they say online, and it's just, this doesn't add up.
Yeah, and that's why I think being authentic is really important. Yeah. I mean, for me, I am who I am, and all of my videos that I do and the video blogs are usually fairly high energy, and I always sign off with never let anyone dull your sparkle, and everything that I try and do, whether it's a blog post, which is always very conversational in the way that I write, whether it's a piece of video content, whether it's like us today having this conversation on a podcast, I always try to be authentically me. I don't ever try to be someone else. I mean, I just think that that's nuts to do that anyway. But people know me and know of me through my personality, and things like when we did the push event and the panel, and you've got to be you, and you can't try and pretend to be bubbly and bright and whatever if you're not, and at the same time I'm not going to be all like, I'm going to be trying and be serious and boring and because that's just not me. So I think it's really important to be authentic and to have your own voice, regardless of whether it's offline or online.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, where can we find these courses at, Tanya?
They're not published yet, but if you subscribe to the newsletter at Digital Conversations, I'll be making those sort of public fairly soon. The candidate one is probably a week away from being launched, I think, so it's pretty close. But if you follow on my social media channels, so you can find me at digital_Tanya on Twitter, and we're on Facebook and LinkedIn. Are the main channels that I'm on. So if you want to find out more, then you will sure to be seeing more about it on those when they launch, but they're not too far away. Yeah.
I'll chuck that all in the show notes.
Fabulous.
Tanya Williams, it's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Ditto.
So thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. You can find all the show notes at bethepush.com/podcast. I appreciate your company, and I hope to talk to you soon.